Hi, my name is Rory, and this is my video reviewing The Shattering the Silences. One of the most interesting things to me, and that resonated with me the most, was the female professors within the video. I took a women in history class, and it really fascinated me because, just being a woman myself, I was thinking about all of their points of view. I think at this period of time, it was kind of the norm to have children, and some of the women within the video, like Gloria, I can't pronounce this right, I'm gonna try, Clusteres, she kept talking about how she had to choose between having children or doing her job. And one of the quotes that really stood out to me was, I have the 10-year clock clicking, as well as the same time the biological clock ticking, and that I might be forced to choose, and I know which one I'm going to choose. The 10-year clock. Again, that was Gloria C. So her last name is Cluseras. I can't pronounce it. And just really stood out to me. It was hard to think that they had to choose about from that, and that they couldn't have both. Just as a young woman, I don't really think about whether work would influence whether or not I get to have a family. These women did such incredible work at their colleges, like the ladies that were doing the mentorship, and then they were doing their tenure thing, and then we're teaching class, and I've known teachers who grade like hundreds of assignments. It's just incredible. The influence the things they needed to do to create that influence, it's just crazy. And all of that stress, the work, the demand, and the small community they had around them must have created so much stress to the point that they thought this was something they had to make as a choice. And then one of the other important quotes that I found was the Darlene Clark kind, one of the other women within the video. She quotes, "We are isolated in terms of geography very often. They are also she also says, we are located in a small white town," end quote. More additional quote, "Most of our generation of black women historians are unmarried." And that's Darlene Clark Hine. These quotes, the choice they had to make and the difference and like the loneliness they were kind of forced into really stood out to me. These women were incredible, and their perspectives are so needed within the community. It's hard to think that they felt so stressed and such in high demand that they had to make choices between what they wanted and their work. Another thing that stood out to me was just overall the bias that people had within the video. Like everyone kind of talked about biases. And one of the students said, "All of my professors have been predominantly white males, and I'd really appreciate a different perspective." All of these perspectives come into play with history. And another one of the students says, "You cannot have good faculty unless it's diverse." And part of the perspective when they teach the inside perspective and the outside perspective, I think it must be hard to teach from an outside perspective. And I can't really say much to that. All of my history classes I've taken have been with a white professor. And I think it kind of feels like telling like a handyman how to do their job when I've never been a handyman. I think new perspectives and new ideas is just interesting. Another part that stood out to me was when the professor mentioned that he was documenting like individual immigration rather than just the popular individuals, and seeing different parts of history. And to me, like what applied to this was my current experience in math and psychology was that when you take a small population data and then you try to generalize that data across a large population, it doesn't really make sense. So, like, when I was doing my studies, it was like we took this small data and it just didn't really apply to everyone. And so if you take that away from this and you put it in a history perspective, and you just take a small population like the white population and you try to generalize it as all of history, it doesn't make sense. You can't teach something without multiple perspectives of how it is. A part that stuck out to me with the quotes was the Professor Wilkins. I feel like he just overall had some great knowledge. He said, "I'm a lumpy Indian and I'm a human being, and I am inherently biased, as are we all." I feel like that really pieces together what I was thinking of the biases that were within teaching and teaching history. Another thing that came from Professor Wilkins is that the work I do is not considered quite as valid as my other colleagues do. That's crazy. I mean, honestly, I think anyone that is a historian who has a degree is worthwhile to listen to, and the fact that he felt that his opinion and his bias wasn't as meaningful as anybody else's is very, very saddening to hear, and really put into perspective for me what this meant, because, as a white woman who's just been introduced to college, I'm an undergraduate, I never really thought about the perspective of who's teaching me and why does their opinion matter and why does their perspective help my teaching. Just really cool. The last quote he says it towards the end of the documentary, there's the word. Towards the end of the documentary, again, this is Professor Wilkins, he says, "But the point I try to raise to the students is that every professor, in the very concept of itself is a professor, is based on the root word profess. And to profess something is to explain someone's views." And that, again, pieces together what I'm trying to say is that the perspective means so much, and that teaching and perspective and bias has everything to do with how we teach history. And sometimes what's it called when they speak over? But the speaker, the person who speaks throughout the thing, they say, there's two quotes that I really like. They said, "Who defines truth and who defines what to teach?" And I don't know. I don't think that I think everyone can teach everyone, and history is such a ongoing thing. And then, again, the speaker says, "Who should teach and what should they learn?" I think that's something you kind of figure out in college, and that what you decide to learn is something that's meaningful to you and what perspective you can give to others. Just overall, this is super cool. I'm not huge on videos, so I'm really trying. I think this is something that I never really thought about more, and I'm very new to ethnic studies in this class. I've had some very minimal history with this, like in school and with my family, but, again, I kind of said that I just took history, and they were both taught by white professors. I think that a diverse staff means a lot, hearing that all the different biases, and that the biases don't directly have a negative wording, but it just means something else we can learn. Overall, such a cool video. Never really thought about a lot of these things. It's very nice to meet you. Thank you so much.